Hello and welcome to the AccelerateHER Podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Pirrie, and as CEO of AccelerateHER, I have got the best job in the world. Throughout this podcast, we're going to hear from some of the incredible female founders that we work with. We'll hear their highs, their lows, and we'll revel in their achievements. We'll cover topics like raising investment, getting a product to market, growing a team, and we'll hear from the people in the ecosystem who have supported them. We're going to hear from amazing founders like Kate Cameron, Danae Schell, and the people who've worked with them like Evelyn McDonald. If this is your first time engaging with AccelerateHER, well, that's a great place to start. But look out for us on social media. You'll find us on Instagram and LinkedIn to see what other events we're running across Scotland. Come along and join us, be part of a vibrant network and part of the family. Now, sit back, relax, and happy listening. Hello and welcome to the AccelerateHER Podcast. I'm Elizabeth Pirrie, and as CEO of AccelerateHER, I have the best job in the world. Our mission is to amplify the backing, visibility and growth of female founders, and through that I get to meet so many amazing women doing amazing things. And talking of amazing women, I am delighted to be joined by Isla Traquair today, a fellow North East Scotland lady. She is an award-winning podcaster, journalist and TV presenter. Isla, welcome.
It's an honour for me to be the first on this podcast, so thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So delighted to have you here, Isla. I'm going to start with a question that I'm going to ask all my podcast guests. What did you want to be when you grew up? When you were a wee girl at school, what did you want to be?
I wanted to be a dancer. I danced from, I actually started ballet at 2. I think it was Good Toes and Bad Toes, but I pursued my dancing and I used to compete in ballet, tap and modern, and I loved it. However, during my childhood, I had multiple leg breaks, including being hit by a car, and my mum had drummed it into me over and over. If anything else happens to you, that's your career over, and that kind of dampened my hopes of becoming a star of the stage. But yeah, but I had no aspirations at all to do what I do. But it was a thing called JINCAL at school. It was through your careers advisor. You filled out a questionnaire and mine came out in 98% suited to being a journalist. Next on the list was librarian, which is hilarious. Obviously it didn't ask about how much you talk. And then I did work experience at the age of 14 at North Sound Radio, and kind of the rest is history. I'm very lucky that I fell into my path very young.
Oh, that's incredible. Do you know, I got to do work experience at an accountancy firm, not nearly as sexy as at a radio station, but I got to do that. I think I was probably about 15, and it was life-changing. It's life-affirming, I think, rather. But yeah, so we could have been wowed by you dancing on the stage, Isla, but instead you're wowing us with words.
Thank you. I think my words are better than my dancing skills anyway.
Well, I've never seen you dance, so I can't comment. I am curious, though. Have you broken anything since you stopped dancing?
No. It was all before the age of primary 7. I actually have broken my left leg twice, right leg once, left ankle, all the toes of my left foot, and then my right arm, and that was all while I was young. Probably because I was doing activities like gymnastics. One of the breaks was at gymnastics, but the other one was my brother, and the other one was a car.
Ah, okay. Yeah, probably as well you stopped dancing then. So from that work experience at North Sound, you then sort of set your sights on, did you study journalism at uni, or what route did you take into it?
No, I had an unusual route, but I had a good route and I had a fast route. So I started school young. I was 4 when I started. So when I was in 4th year, I was only 14. And I think most people were about 15 when they did their first work experience. So I enjoyed North Sound, and this was back in the day when tape actually got cut and stuck together. That's how you edited it. And it was just fascinating, the buzz of the newsroom. I mean, I mainly made tea, but that was about it. Interestingly, Ross Govins, who is still at STV, he was working at North Sound at the time, so I've known him since I was 14. And then the following year, I applied to do journalism again for my work experience, and I ended up at North Scot Press Agency based in Aberdeen, and it does stories for all the national papers. And they liked me so much, they said, look, would you be willing to come in 1 day a week? So I worked for free 1 day a week. And that's when I got my first front page when I was 15. My intention had been to go to university, and I'd been accepted to do English. And then I was going to do a postgrad in journalism. But during my summer break, and I stayed on to do my 6th year at school because I was still only 16 and I felt quite young to go off to Edinburgh. So I stayed on to do my 6th year. And over that summer, the Aberdeen Journals had a competition for school, university, college leavers to do an in-house training scheme. And there's a bit of a story behind that, but I was one of the 9, and I was the youngest that got picked for that. But the truth is, I didn't get in. There was 350 of us, and it got whittled down to 30. We were brought in groups of 10, and we had to do like exam and a group discussion and all this stuff. And one of the tests was recall as many details as you can about a story in the paper in the last 7 days. So I bullet pointed it, and I didn't get in the course. So I phoned up the woman who did the course and said, can I ask, what I did wrong? I'd love feedback. And she said, well, we were really surprised because you did great, but we wanted you to write it in the style of a story, and you bullet pointed it. And I said, well, that wasn't clear. She said, well, to be honest, you weren't the only one. And I said, look, I really want to do this course. Everyone else was going to get paid. I said, why don't I do it and you don't pay me? And if I'm found to be lacking, you can throw me off. And she basically said, well, she had to go and ask her boss, but with balls like that, you'll make a great journalist. So I kind of came in the side door, and I did very well, and they didn't need to throw me off, and I didn't get paid. So I worked at a hotel as a waitress. So I was working during the day and then working at night and weekends at a hotel. We did 6 months classroom-based training. We had university and college lecturers come in, and it was SVQ something or other. So we did law, public administration, shorthand, writing skills, all that kind of stuff. And then we were set free, and 18 months on the job training to complete our qualification. And that's how I got into it. So not the usual route. And I'm not poo-pooing university at all. But honestly, I feel you can't really learn the skill of being a journalist unless you're doing it. Every day is different. You learn something different every day. You have a different type of person to interview, or a different scenario. So I feel very blessed, very blessed.
So you started, the tenacity you had there to just say, I'll come and do it, but don't pay me. It seems like from talking to you over time that's a theme that's followed through your career, but we'll come back to that. Yeah, not getting paid enough. So from there, am I right in thinking you went to the P&J? You started in papers,
well, yeah.
is that right?
The journals at that time had the 3 papers under their wing. They had the Herald and Post, the weekly paper, the Evening Express, the tabloid, and then the broadsheet, as it was then, the Press and Journal. So I actually started at the Herald and Post because I was the last on in the course. And so I worked there. I'm trying to remember how long it was. And then I moved on to the P&J. But I had this brilliant editor, Harry Rolston, who's a legend. He was actually the editor of The Scotsman back in the day. And I think he was editor of the P&J. And he came out of retirement to edit the Herald and Post, to breathe new life into it. And so that's... Yeah. So it was actually a really great grounding for me, because to start in a weekly paper, there's a slower pace. But he was tough on me. And it was the best, education I could have. Even if you did something really well, you'd be like, that's all right, that's mediocre. And you knew you'd done really well. So then I moved on to the Press and Journal, and I worked there until 2001. And I wasn't given any sort of title list, but I was doing well. I was getting a lot of front pages. I was doing a lot of crime stuff by accident. And this is a theme as well in my career. And I know some of the questions you've got coming up. And none of my career was sort of planned. It has organically unfolded by accident. And I've just sort of gone with the flow and followed my heart. And my heart wasn't pulling me towards crime. It was, do you want me to go into this level of detail at this point as to how that ended up being my thing? Or
well, yeah, I'm really interested to know, and I'm quite relieved to hear that your heart wasn't pulling you towards crime and that you've stayed on the right side of the law.
Yeah, exactly. So the worst task given to any journalist is called a death knock, and it is as awful as it sounds. And it's when someone has died in a tragic way or young, and you have to go and knock on the door of the family, which is honestly the worst thing in the world. It's horrible. But you have to do it. And the purpose is to go and ask if they want to do a tribute piece. So I threw up the first time I had to do it. And I was so glad that the loved one was not home, but I was still sick. And then, but I ended up being really good at it because I am a genuine and compassionate and empathetic person. And I would just say, I am so sorry. I know I'm the last person you want to see right now. And my bosses, when they hear this, my old bosses will be growling. But I'd say, look, if you don't want to talk to me, I'm going to go and you're not going to see me again. But if you want if you want to talk about your loved one for me to do a tribute piece, then here I am. And I was highly successful at it, and they found it very cathartic to talk about it. Still doing that now, not in the same way. I don't go knock on anyone's door these days. It's very different, but that was how I ended up. So I was sort of going in at the point of the grief, but then I ended up being at the point of the police tape going up. So that was kind of how it happened. And then I ended up being the court reporter for the Press and Journal. So I was in court every single day, and then I would, cover things on the front end as well. So I would do it from the beginning to end, from the crime being committed through to an appeal, if there was one.
And so how did that then become, at this point you were working for the journals, and then you went into television, presumably that was employment as well. How did that then transition into, I guess, the sort of portfolio career that you've got now? Was that a conscious decision? You say everything's happened organically to you.
No, I had no intention. I didn't want to be on TV or, people think that when you end up being a TV presenter, which is one of my roles, that you've always wanted that. Not at all. I looked down my nose at television news because I would do like 15 stories a day for the P&J. And then when I went to television, I'm like, you do one story a day? But my goodness, did I get a slap in the face when I realised how much work goes into producing 1 to 2 minutes of television. I still remember my very first story. It was about these two chess prodigy brothers who lived in Stonehaven, Peter and Victor Vass. I still remember their names. We did so much filming, and then we went back and I wrote up my script, and they're like, right, go and do a voiceover. I'm like, how do you do a voiceover? And I grabbed Kirsten Gove, who's still a really good friend of mine. I grabbed her in the corridor, obviously one of the presenters. I love her. And I'm like, how'd you do voiceover? And she sort of said, there's usually about 3 parts in one sentence that you'll emphasize the most important. So she gave me a quick, very fast. And I went and did my voiceover. And in those days, you did it in an actual booth and you had a sound person recording. So I was whispering. They're like, that's great, Isla, but we need to hear you. So yeah, I got a wake up call. So television, it kind of happened that I'd not done everything I could do in newspapers, but I'd pretty much got to the top of my game there. And I'd had a meeting with one of the bosses at Grampian because they'd seen me around. And then, and then I got offered a job. So that was, okay, why not? Give it a go. No intention of leaving Aberdeen, no intention of changing jobs, all that kind of stuff. But then life happens. I'd been offered a job in London several times, but because I'd been shortlisted for awards and I'd come to their attention, and I'd said no because I was married to a local loon. But then sadly the marriage fell apart, and the most obvious thing was, right, I should go and do that now. But that didn't really go to plan either. I was supposed to be loaned out to ITV. They kind of have a deal with the regionals, but series 3 of Murders got greenlit, and they said, you can't go. I should explain, in between all doing my news and being a news correspondent and presenter, I think I was the youngest newsreader in Britain at the time. I was 21 when I did. That was equally awful. Like, go and read the bulletin. And you were in a cupboard in those days, and it was Sir Trevor MacDonald, and I thought that my heart was beating out of my body. But anyway, I had to learn on the fly everything. No one taught me how to present. Just like, read that out loud and look there. So anyway, I didn't make any mistakes on that occasion anyway. So in between doing news, we were encouraged to come up with ideas for documentaries, and I'd obviously worked in crime, so that's how doing Unsolved came about. This was they did 3 series. There was 6 main episodes, and then I think there was an extra 7th one where I did a crime watch update show. So that was again a real baptism of fire. I'd never written a documentary before, and it was kind of like sink or swim. But I literally typed up every single interview that I did for for that episode, and I'd physically cut out the answers and put them on, sections of before the crime happened and eyewitnesses and to the timeline, and that's how I did it. So that was again a learning curve, which I did that series with the late DJ McDonald, who's an absolute legend in news in that part of the world. A great learning curve. So anyway, I did series 3, and I was about to get released to go and work at ITV, and then someone else quit. So I got told I couldn't leave. So I thought, do you know what? This is never going to happen. They're never going to let us. I quit. I had no job. I had a trial. So I went down as a freelance. And then I was doing a bit of both. I was still actually doing the murder series, and I was working weekends at ITN. So that's how it started. And then I did get a contract. And then very quickly I got offered a bunch of other jobs, because I covered the Ipswich prostitute serial killer case, which is a really awful, 5 women were murdered, and I got a big scoop on that. I was there when they found the final 2 bodies. I ended up on news all over the world. I got offered big money jobs, and I turned them all down because I wanted to remain loyal to ITV, and I felt they'd give me the first opportunity, and they'd had their eye on me. It was Deborah Turness, who's my goodness, risen very high in the world. And Jonathan Minot also have done incredibly well. It was those 2 that had spotted me, and I felt like I should stay there, and that's what I did. I also felt it was really important to prove myself as a journalist, because in London and the rest of anything south of wherever, Dundee, no one had a clue who I was. They didn't know that I'd done all these big stories, and I felt like I needed to prove myself, and I didn't want to be labelled an auto cutie, because if you fail as an auto cutie, then that's you out. So funnily enough, my boss at This Morning was one of the people I turned down. He was the boss of GMTV at the time, and he didn't speak to me for a very long time.
He's obviously forgiving you now.
Me. Now he's had the last laugh because I'm, working for him now, and not the main person on the couch. But I've no regrets.
No, I'm a firm believer. As my wee granny used to say, what's for you won't go by you. So it's clearly the path that you were meant to take. Isla, I'm going to pause on your story there for a wee minute. One thing we want to do in this podcast is help out some of the founders that will be listening. So we've put an appeal out for questions for Accelerate Her. And I've promised that we'll try and answer them alongside the guests on the podcast. And this one I think is perfect for you, because listening to your story there and the tenacity and determination that you have demonstrated, I think our founder here needs to hear some of that. So this is from Rosie, who asked me on LinkedIn. My mum Sylvia and I recently started our own small business, Evergreen Wonders, where we make rolled beeswax candles. Now, we don't have a physical store and are looking to partner with local sustainability shops to offer our candles. However, and here's the question, I've been finding it challenging to reach out to such shops, as I worry about how I'm going to come across. I want to share our story, but I worry that I might be doing too much or not enough. So in a sense, she says, my challenge is that I want to do it perfectly to the point that I end up not doing it at all. Isla, what's your advice for Rosie? How can she get out there and sell herself? I think this is something that women in particular struggle with. I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but you've managed to get yourself out there without coming across as overzealous or whatever. So what's your advice?
My advice to her is that she has to just go and do it. I honestly believe, whether it's business or journalism or whatever, it's people that's, people and their stories that are important. And just hearing about this, her and her mother, that's something that people will invest in. That's something that consumers are interested in. This is a mother-daughter team who are making this lovingly, these candles. And I see this so often, and I have it too. It's called imposter syndrome. And I remember my first day going from the weekly newspaper to the daily newspaper. I was absolutely pooping my pants, shall we say. And I thought, I'm not going to be able. And what you do is then you get there and you're looking around going, actually, I'm doing all right. And I think that she has to just, perfectionism, which I also have a problem with as well, and never good enough. Even when I win an award, I'm like, it's not good enough. So I think that what she has to do is go out there. I personally, I would take the product. I would go to the shops and say, go and introduce yourself. Go in as a person, as a human being. Don't email and all that kind of stuff. And I know there's so much on social media these days. I appreciate it's important, but I think the personal touch, having a big Instagram following for her candles or some smart videos, that is a good marketing tool. But I think nothing beats just going in and introducing herself, telling her story, and offering her product. And I think that's the best you can do. And you know what? Candles don't need to be perfect. That everyone's unique. That is, our differences are what make us unique. Our imperfections are our perfections. So that would be my advice.
Our imperfections are our perfections. I love that, Isla. I can see that becoming a soundbite for this. And that's great advice for Rosie. I completely agree, that personal touch. If you're listening and you think you can help Rosie in particular, if you've got a store that would like to stock our candles, give us a shout and we'll try and connect you up. But thanks for that question, Rosie, and thanks, Isla, for helping us answer that. But let's get back to your story. I want to sort of fast forward to now and everything that you're doing just now. My first question is, do you consider yourself to be an entrepreneur or to be entrepreneurial?
No, because I attach that word to business, and here's my own imposter syndrome happening. But I am, I suppose. I am. One of my lovely friends said, so I wish you could remember the quote exactly. She said, you create something from absolutely nothing and turn it into, you take the sand of a desert and turn it into a diamond. Or something. It was something, my baby said that wrong. But I will accept that some of the stories I've put out there, no one would have heard them if I hadn't done what I've done, and it has been entirely off my own back. So I am entrepreneurial. I think the reason why I have difficulty with that word is because I often would associate that with, huge financial success. And that's not to say that won't come, but what I do is a huge amount of work, insane hours. And thankfully I have all the skills. I edit, produce, write, present. I do all. If I was to have to pay different people to do those skills, there's no way I'd afford to be able to do it. It just wouldn't have happened. And despite the fact that my listening numbers are into millions, people have no idea, these platforms, they get most of the money. They have no input in the production at all. I literally even have to write the adverts and voice them myself and put them in and put the timers in. They've got the software that it goes out on. But where my, my sensible part of the business head of where my work develops is I've got the core of my stories that I do that are true. And then there's the other stuff which takes time, which is the turning them into dramas, the books, etc. And that's where I need to take my own advice that I gave to Rosie and really, push forward with that. I do have a deal currently for the series 2 turning into drama, but the industry, television and film has taken a really bad hit over the last few years. And that's a real struggle. I am constantly working very, very hard. And again, creating something amazing from what's doesn't exist. So in a long-winded way, I shall accept I'm sort of an entrepreneur.
I would say you're an entrepreneur, but it's a funny word, isn't it? And women in particular often don't. I think if you say entrepreneur, people think Alan Sugar, Duncan Bannatyne, people like that. You tend not to think of women, but I meet women every day who are entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial for sure. And I think we should start a movement to reclaim the word, Isla. Are you with me on that?
I am. And my dad, who's retired now, he's an entrepreneur. And even though, his business was software to do with the oil industry and personal personnel and board systems, nothing like what I do. But he said to me that he sees me in him because I am the innovator in the family. That I'm the one that's really gone out and been brave. And I know what I do is brave, and I think what I do terrifies so many people to not know where the next paycheck's coming from. But I am just, and there is a story where I went from being steadily employed and having a boss and being part of a big company to where I sort of branched off, which is actually involving the death of a really good friend of mine. But in fact, maybe I'll just slightly rewind a bit. So I had a job all going well, ended up at ITV National News, then ended up at Channel 5 News, ended up having my own show. I was the 7 p.m. news anchor. They redesigned the show around me. All that was going great. And then one of my really good friends got diagnosed with terminal cancer, and things at Channel 5 at the time were changing anyway. I think my show was going to turn into some sort of chat show, and she had a limited time left, and I decided to leave and go and help look after her. And I'm really glad that I did. So got to spend some precious time with her, and she passed away. And I had told her I'd gone on holiday to Vancouver and how much I'd loved it. And this friend of mine had lived all over the world, worked all over the world. She's like, you should go and live in Vancouver. So after she died, I'm like, I need to go and live in Vancouver now, because I promised her I would do that. And that's how it came about. And I went over and I contacted some production companies, and they're like, we'd love to work with you. I came back to the UK, and then nothing happened. And I thought, I just need to move there. So I moved over there. And within, I think it was 2 to 3 months, I had a commission from the Oprah Winfrey Network. So I did a health investigation series there. We were supposed to do a second series, complications I shan't go into, to do with licensing laws, that all their commissioning got frozen for a while. Went to a documentary conference in LA. Again, no intention of moving there. Went to this documentary conference. I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna have to live here because of all the connections. No desire for the Hollywood life or anything like that, and I still don't. But it made sense. It was a hub of creatives, and I was out there for a long time, very much more in the development side of things. And then the podcast, where I'm at now, and the real innovation now, because I've always had to team up with people. I have an idea, so I'll be the development producer, the executive producer, and then you've got to team up with a big company, because people, as a woman on your own, you cannot walk into a network and say, hello, here's a great idea. Doesn't happen. There's a million hurdles and there's a million dangers of them taking your idea as well, so you've got to be protected. So when I came back in 2018, because my mum was poorly, and I was doing a lot of between London and Aberdeen on the train, because I have a dog, and that's when my boyfriend at the time got me into podcasts. I'd never listened to podcasts, and that's how I was listening to them on the train, and I was on my way home, and I'm like, I've got so many amazing stories to do. And that's when I just had this sort of bright idea of contacting the mother of a murder victim, the first big murder case I ever covered. I was 19 when I covered that story, and I recognised it was coming up to the 20th anniversary. And I said, hey, I want to do something to mark, the 20th anniversary of Melanie dying. And do you want to do a podcast? And she said, what's a podcast? And I'm like, let's find out. And that's how I got into doing what I'm doing now. And I really, really love working for myself, because when you're involved in corporations, there's someone who's, no offense to anyone who's young, but I might have a 25-year-old telling me what to do that's got what has done well in development or whatever, and they have no clue. They have no clue about crime. They've got no clue about what I do. And sorry, I don't like being told what to do. Yeah. But I really believe in what I do, and it's not perfect. I miss having someone to sound off. What I do is I send my rough cuts get sent to some good friends. They're my listening party, and I trust them to give me advice. And there's something I'm working on right now, and I just sent like a 1.5-minute trailer, and everyone's be like, oh my God, I can't wait to hear this. So I'm just going to trust that the listeners like what I do, but I do like the control aspect. I have ADHD, which is my superpower, and I hate the cliche, and it's my superpower, but it is, because I am insanely laser focused. I work day and night editing. I sometimes I'll work till the small hours of the morning, and then I wake up at 6. I'll put the kettle on. While it's boiling, I've already started up my laptop, and I'll just sit there, and I haven't made my tea for 3 hours. This is how I work. It's great for my work. It's not very healthy for me. But it means that I can just disappear into my brain because I tell really complicated stories. And I can't do what a company would want. They'd say, right, can you give us the episode breakdown? I'm like, no, haven't done it yet. Haven't done the interviews. I don't know what they're going to say. And I'm going to be led by the story, by the truth, by what I feel is right, and not what you want as a plan. So I feel that being creative is a really, really important part for me to have freedom in that department and not be constrained by business.
I'm so glad you brought it around to the podcast. You know, I am a mega fan of your podcast. Myself and my husband are always listening. I've listened to you've had 3 series out so far. It's called Storyteller, and you can find it in all your favourite podcast places. And I mean, I think it's so well done. And so sensitively done. You don't over dramatize it. You do just tell the story. And one thing that really struck me, sort of thinking of it in the context of the founders I work with, is that the Melanie Sturton case, the first one that you did, was the first murder that you reported on, as you say, as a 19-year-old journalist. I assume at that point you had no idea that in 20 years' time you would be doing an award-winning podcast. Now, I don't think podcasts had even been invented at that point, but you clearly made connections then, not just with Melanie's mum, but with police officers and forensics and things on the case that came in handy for you 20 years later. I'm always telling founders when you're out networking, when you meet someone, you never know when you might need to call on them. And that is a classic example of that. Was any of that deliberate, or was it just your personality and just the way you are?
Just the way I am. I don't keep in touch with every single person I've done a story on because my goodness, how many stories there'd be. There are key people who impact you in a particular way because of, how can you not become close with someone when you've witnessed them going through the worst thing that could possibly happen to another human being? I care deeply about Susan Patrick. That's Melanie's mother. She is a special place in my heart, and we got even closer. Don't get me wrong, we were not on the phone regularly over the 20 years. It was, that there was a letter, and there was but back in the day, send a letter. And there was just a thought and a care, and every time I drive past certain addresses in Aberdeen, and particularly Melanie's is an address I would usually always drive past. It's on Great Western Road. I would think about her. So, but with regards to what you said, it's really, really important. You never know who you're going to meet on the way up and on the way down. And I remember working at 5 News, and I can't remember what her exact job title would have been, but she was further down the ladder, shall we say, and she was brilliant. And she was young, like super young, or felt like she was super young. And I remember recognizing how talented she was. And she, I hope everyone that's worked with me feels that way, that I treat everyone with respect and kindness. And I remember saying, you're going to be my boss one day, So recognizing that sounds really calculated. It's not how it's meant to be. If someone stays the tea girl and they're the tea girl for the rest of life, they're also a very valuable person. By the way, make tea in every job. I make tea no matter where I work. I still, make the tea. But you don't know who you're going to see. Just as a human being, good advice is act with integrity, be honest, be a good person, and don't be unkind, don't diddle anyone. And I think that is absolutely what has stood me in good stead, that I have the trust, not just of the police officers and, the people on the kind of prosecution side, but also on the defence side. They know that I'm fair. They know that I am, hopefully good at what I do. And yeah, it absolutely opened doors. I should say there's a organisation for retired police officers, for what was formerly Grampian Police, and they've been invaluable because I'll send an email to the organiser and say, like, hi, I'm trying to get someone that was involved in, if you got any contact details, because trying to find people these days, despite the internet, is actually trickier. And they've been amazing. So he'll put a shout out, and I get people coming saying, yeah, I'll speak to her, because they know what I do, and that's all I can hope for. So yeah, I had no did I ever think I would do anything on Melanie's story again? No, genuinely not. There wasn't any kind of plan of, I'll do a documentary in 20 years' time or a podcast, or there was no intention of that at all. It's just, yeah, there's stuff that just stays in my mind. There's people who I've stayed close to. I should say as well that there definitely comes a point with my own mental health where when you're working on a case like this, you end up being more than just someone. It's not straightforward professional. You become emotionally involved with these people and you become a person they can talk to. When you have had someone or your life touched with murder, people don't like talk. I mean, people are weird about grief and death anyway. They'll cross this, they'll put a casserole on your doorstep, but they kind of don't know what to do or say. So people who've gone through things like that tend to feel like a bit of a leper at times. It's really awful. And I can just dive in there. The grief does not scare me because I've been faced with it from a very young age. I mean, too young to be quite honest. I think my first double fatal accident when I was about 17, that was awful. But I feel that I'm a person that they know that they can call and talk to for hours about their loved one, and all their friends are tired of it, and even some of their family don't want to talk about it. So there's that. But I do have to have a point where I'm like, I need to have my own space because it takes up a lot of my mental space. And there's something I'm working on right now, which is sad I can't tell you anything about, but it's dark and it's heavy and it's really, really awful. And the victims are still alive. And this is a new experience for me to do such a deep dive with people who are still living and coping with the most horrendous things. And it is difficult. And thankfully, I've been able to be really honest and say, look, I need to, I had a friend visiting, for example. I'm like, I'm here and I'll text you, but I might not be able to get back as quickly as I normally would because it's really important to have that kind of thing. And I think that's good advice for business as well. We have to have a life, we have to have balance, and we have to have boundaries. So, it's working out that your tank is not completely empty because you're giving to everyone else.
Yeah, that's so true for whatever business you're in. I think particularly when it's your own business, you can it's your baby. You never want to, you're thinking about it 24/7, but you do need to take that time out and just relax. Isla, I could probably make this a 3-hour podcast and still not cover everything that I'd want to cover with you. I do have some quick fire questions to ask you, but before we go on to that, I want to ask one final question, and that's, what's next? I'm interested to know, you've spoken about doing it all yourself and you don't have the editors and the production company and everything. Would that be your dream, to build a bigger company with these people around you?
No. I hate business side of things. I hate I have been offered, I mean, I'd been really successful. I'd gone on the route of management and news desks and all that kind of stuff. I've always been a boots on the ground person, even when I was being, Mrs. News Anchor, and here I am with my own show, and I'd be throwing to that person who's at the explosion. I'm like, I want to be there. People are very nice to you when you're in the shiny floor, but I feel like I'm a kind of, what I love is people and their stories, and that is my business, and telling stories. I think storytelling is so crucial and key, particularly at this moment in time. It's January 2025. I'm going ahead of myself. We've just had
I think it'll be March when this comes out.
March,
so we could really
well,
confuse
goodness
everyone.
knows what's happened since then. But this year we've had these horrendous fires in Los Angeles. We've had the horrendous inauguration, all those things going on in the world. And I think that storytelling is something that really impacts people. I think our greatest challenge in the world is apathy, and what we need is empathy. And I think a clever way of getting empathy into people is by them hearing of other people's stories and for a moment putting themselves in their shoes and trying to have compassion and understanding. So I think I'm always going to do that. But I think with regards to what I'm doing next, and as I say, these things kind of are slow. All of my stories that I've already got out there, they're great. And I have more. And my dream, honestly, because I am now a bit of a recluse, is I just want to be locked away in my cabin, writing the scripts and doing the books. Again, things I never, ever dreamed. I had no aspirations. I've had people throughout my life go, "You're going to write a book?" I'm like, "Don't be ridiculous. I'm not going to write a book. I'm not that arrogant." But then when I did my first murder series, I got a phone call from a I think was it an agent or a publisher, and they said, "We've listened, you're a brilliant writer. Have you thought about writing a book?" And I said no, but I've got a couple of weeks before my next project starts, and I wrote the book in, I can't remember if it was 7 or 10 days. So I wrote it, and then I haven't looked at it. I need to go and edit it, but COVID happened, so I kind of got slightly derailed and allergic to looking at it. So the book's there, but I need to go and work on it. But I have actually, there's a script. I'm still in the middle of it actually for series 2, series 3. They're all good. They're all going to basically be made into dramas, and that's what I really want to do, because I'd love the ability to take and really try and stay true to these stories. There will absolutely be made up characters blending 3 different policemen into one, because you can't have a story like that where you've got the characters of the 10 key police officers that were working on the case and all that kind of stuff. But the key stories are usually about women, usually about what's happened to them, how the media have framed them in history. And I really, really want to change that. And that is, my purpose is to educate people about, coercive control and all the awful things that happen to not just women, but men as well, these different personality disorders, and how to know when to escape and give people the strength to do that.
I can't wait. Put me down as a pre-order for the book, Isla. Better get 2, because Andy will want to read it at the same time.
I'll let you read it, because I'm allergic to it. It's my imposter syndrome. So,
well, you do write fantastic stories, so I can't wait to read it. Right, let's finish with a wee bit of fun. These questions, I did send you them in advance because they're a wee bit off the wall, and I thought I'd give you a bit of time to think about it. But let's go for fairly quick fire answers, starting with, what is the best advice you have ever ignored?
And as I told you off camera, my first one is, don't go out with him, or don't get back with him. Joking aside, I thought in the business context, actually, it was ignoring my own advice, which is my gut. Sometimes, you just have a feeling in your gut, and I think it's really important to trust that. So I think there's been times in my life where I've ignored it and tried to do what I thought was sensible or polite, or, we've got a real fear in this country of doing anything that might feel uncomfortable. But I would say no, make yourself uncomfortable and do what's right for you.
Great advice for anyone listening. Who would you dream of having as a mentor for the day?
This has to be the wonderful legend, the Lord, the God, the Sir, David Attenborough. Now, he does something different for me, but I just love him. It was just really, I'd like to go and hang out with him for a day. I'd like to be in a jungle, imagining he's got his microphone behind a bush while he's doing the voiceovers, which obviously is not true, but I love him. His storytelling is different, but it's so important because it's about our environment, it's about our world. So he is someone I would love to spend the day with.
Oh, what a great answer, David Attenborough. Brilliant. Okay, you spoke about having to take yourself out of what you were doing and have some time to yourself. What's your guilty pleasure when you need to unwind?
I watch crime dramas. Do you know, when I'm working on a case, I love podcasts. When I'm working on a case, I cannot listen to anyone else's crime podcast because I will get imposter syndrome. Like, well, that's how they're doing it. I need to create what I'm going to create without looking at anyone else. It's really important, because I think actually that's good advice. Don't start if you're rowing your boat, stop looking at how everyone else is rowing their boat or where they're going. Concentrate on your own lane. So, but I do enjoy. My brain doesn't switch off. So what I do is I fall asleep watching dramas about awful murders. And I know that seems so silly. I do watch some lighter-hearted things sometimes. I love Schitt's Creek, Ted Lasso, Shrinking, anything on Apple TV I love. So I do watch. I watch TV. I love reading, and I go through periods of my life where I'm an avid reader, and then sometimes I just can't. When my brain's on, I can't get into the books. I'm still thinking about other things, so I need to just watch something. And I'm really bad habit. I put it on my phone I jam it between the two pillowcases beside me, or pillows beside me, and I fall asleep watching a crime channel.
And that leads us nicely on actually to the next question is, what is the best book, podcast or TV show that you've watched, read, listened to recently? And you're not allowed to say Storyteller for podcast. That's my answer.
I would say actually something I've really loved that I've watched recently, and I guess it's kind of what I try and do as well, although, right, here's something that Oprah did not say this directly to me. She was my boss, but it was said through someone else and said to me. And she said, consumers, let's just take the granola. People might not want to eat granola because they view it as it's not actually that healthy because it's covered in sugar, but granola is like a healthy cereal, but they'll eat chocolate covered granola because they like the chocolate. So they eat the chocolate covered granola and they're like, oh, I feel good for you. I'm getting some goodness in me. And then they'll eventually just eat the granola out of the chocolate. So that's what I try and do with my stories. They might be covered in kind of the shrine of, or a shroud of murder or whatever, but there's stories in there of humanity. And sometimes I say this, in the darkest of places, you see the brightest of lights of humanity. And this show, which I love, is one of those. It's called Shrinking. And it's Harrison Ford and Jason Segel and Brett Goldstein. Brett Goldstein, he's in Ted Lasso, and he's one of the writers, actually. It's brilliant. It's about therapists. And one of the main characters, his wife had been killed by a drunk driver. So there's all these awful subjects, but it's one of the most, it's funny, they're human, they talk about stuff, and I really, really love that show. So I think if someone needs a good mental, I've made it sound really dark, but a really good mental health break and something that will give you the chocolate covered granola, because you will take away great life advice in that show, is Shrinking.
Fantastic. Well, all I heard was chocolate covered Harrison Ford, and you've got me there. And finally, one word, Isla, to describe your business journey, your career. Can you sum it up in one word?
Chaotic.
Chaotic.
No. Okay, let me think of one word. Unexpected, I would say. Unexpected is probably. I'm named after a river, and someone once said that, I kind of am one, because I travel far and I go to all these weird places that I don't expect, and I pick up and see and experience things within my water on the way, and I think that's a lovely thing. But my name also does mean island in Spanish, and I'd say that's very accurate also, in a complete recluse hiding in my tower with my dog. So, unexpected.
Unexpected. I think that's a good answer. Isla, thank you so much for your time today. If people want to find you, I know they'll find Storyteller on, I think, all the usual podcast places, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You're on Instagram as well?
Yeah, Instagram, it's just my name, Isla Traquair. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes how to spell it. And yeah, my podcast, so I think they're all under the banner currently of The Storyteller, and then you have to do a : Naked Villainy. The first series is Murder Most Foul, then Violent Delights, and then I can't tell you what the next one's called. It's very, it's I'll tell you off my, I'll let you hear the teaser. Actually, it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal. I don't take credit for the stories I tell. They're phenomenal stories. I'm just the deliverer of it.
Yeah, but you deliver them so well. Thank you, Isla, and we'll speak soon. Thanks for listening to me chat to another amazing female founder. I hope you enjoyed that. Of course, this podcast wouldn't have been possible without the backing and support of some amazing organisations. The Scottish Government, who funded this through their Pathways Fund, Barclays Bank for letting us record this in their amazing Glasgow campus, to Podplistic for seamlessly recording this and cutting out all of my bloopers, and of course to the guests for giving their time to come along and chat to me. If you want to hear more about Accelerate Her, please do follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram. Pop over to our website, accelerateher.co.uk, and sign up to our newsletter. I look forward to seeing you at an Accelerate Her event soon.